Thank you.
Good. Okay, thanks. So we're talking about risk and the profile along a road, and you can see at intersections there's spikes due to, yes, the conflict points, we call them, the points where vehicles can crash into each other or striking pedestrians or cyclists, but also that run-off road risk as well. So we want to then think about, well, when these incidents happen, what are we expecting the outcome to be in terms of death and serious injury to our community? And that's going to be a biomechanics of injury discussion, which we talked about. So the physics of it, the how much force can we handle as humans? It's going to depend then on, well, what is the road user involved? What is the mass of the vehicle? So a big truck versus or are you being struck by something lighter like a smaller car or a push bike, for example? And then what speed does this incident happen at? And there's also a little bit of what angle are we seeing? So this was a general sort of indication chart we put into the Austroads Guide to Road Safety, part 6, to just try to give people a little bit of an indication on that. And you can see it's a bit of a scale. It's not just, this very clear point, 31 kilometers an hour will be unsafe, 29 will be safe. No, I mean, there's so many variables in that with, who's being struck and how they're being struck and exactly how it happens and different things. But you get a general indication there of some different crash types and the speeds that these happen. So we start to now add this into our thinking about intersection management. So yes, the design of the intersection and then the operation of the intersection. So just a little bit of something to get you writing some ideas into the chat. And I'm going to put up this intersection here. Just a very, very typical intersection across New Zealand. You see lots of these. You've got sort of, thousands and thousands of these out there. You can see it's controlled by a stop or give way sign. Vehicles come up from this side road. They have a look. They make their decision. They turn. We've got an 80 kilometer per hour speed limit on this road. Actually, I think it's 70. So it's a 70 kilometer per hour speed limit on this road. I think it's actually 80 up here a bit further, and then it changes. And this is a 50 kilometer per hour urban default coming in the side here. And sort of around the 10,000 vehicles a day. Not that this really matters on this road and a bit less on the other road. So just typing into the chat, actually, I think I can show you a few pictures. There you go. There it is from a dash cam. You can see vehicles exiting that road, and it sweeps around. Let's have a look from the other side. There you go. You can see it again, where you've got a little bit of a turn lane. You've just got the subdivision starting to sprawl out in this area. Okay, so just pop some ideas in there. What would you put yourself now, be a development engineer? We want to improve this intersection. People are queuing back a long way during peak hours, waiting to get out here. We are seeing some crashes at this location, so we want to improve safety. We want to make people be able to get in and out of there. What are your ideas? Pop it into the chat. Or what could we do to lessen the risk here and improve the situation? Okay, Jane in there with a roundabout. So Jane gets a prize to kick it off. Okay, good. Okay, we're seeing lots of ideas. I'll give you a second to just pop it in there. Seeing signals, roundabouts. Okay, good. We're thinking about the different intersection form controls at the intersection. Okay. Thank you. Okay, wonderful, wonderful thoughts here. Now this is good. Let me talk to some of the ideas that you've popped up there, and we will come back to this intersection and we'll analyze it in a little bit more detail. We saw like a number of people in there talking about the idea of signalization. So that now that's I'm very specific with saying signals, traffic signals. Some people say traffic lights. Now, that's one where it's a very intentional choice. And I can basically, as soon as somebody in a technical forum says traffic lights, I immediately know they haven't been in this industry long. Now, that's probably just my technical side coming out. The reason we sort of say signal lights could be, illumination lights and those sort of things. We always call it signals. Now, from a comms perspective, the public probably just wants to call it lights, so we can think about that. But anyway, that's just a little language discussion. So a lot of people said signals. Now, signals, they address the likelihood of crash, right? And they will address it at that location by about 45%. As in, we'll get 45% less crashes at a location when we change it from a stop sign or a give way sign and make it traffic signals. That's pretty great, isn't it? I mean, we could reduce the number of crashes by 45% by signalizing it, by being very clear, stop, that's you've had your time to go, now you come out, and vice versa. And people are not making rash decisions, pushing to get out in front of others because they know they'll get their turn. So that addresses the likelihood of crash by about 45%. But just to make sure we're very clear that a set of traffic signals does not provide us with our objectives of Vision Zero, but on their own. I just quickly heat mapped death and serious injury. I picked a random area of Auckland. I could have picked any urban center with when you just go out a little bit, where there's a little bit more speed going on, and just plotted the death and serious injury over a 10-year period. Oh, sorry, that's Hamilton, is it? My bad. Oh, it is too, Hamilton Golf Club. Sorry. Prize for identifying. I actually have Auckland hidden in there somewhere. It must have been easier to point this out of the signals. Now, there are some other intersection form in here, but like real hotspots of death or serious injury are often traffic signals. That's signalized, isn't it? So there's been this common misunderstanding from the public, but also from our technical ranks, our engineering ranks, and often our planners, to say that traffic signals are the ultimate sort of form of intersection from a safety perspective until maybe we grade separate. Now, I think we're getting better at it, and actually I'd say New Zealand is some of the better in the world nowadays from that engineering perspective, to understand that a set of traffic signals is not necessarily a safe place to be, because it still retains that massive amount of death and serious injury through that severity outcome. Yes, 45% less crashes, but that 55% that still happen at speed and harsh angles. There's another area, that one's out of metropolitan Melbourne. I've got lots and lots of these available for different cities around the world, and they all, really clearly have these death and serious injury at signalized intersections. Now, admittedly, those signalized intersections have high exposure. They have high volume of vehicles crossing each other and all those other issues. But a roundabout, which a number of you asked for, that is all about addressing the severity of crash. And so we see vehicles coming in, They slow down, they look around, there's better angles of crash. We've eliminated a lot of conflict points. I'll show you shortly. So what we see is this, reduction in severities. Incidents still occur, especially rear end crashes, a little bit of side swipe crash if you're on a two-lane roundabout like this. And so we still see quite a few incidents. They're just very minor. And in fact, what we know, I said before, 45% crash reduction for a roundabout, a set of traffic signals, I apologize. This one is around the 80 to 85% reduction in death or serious injury. Okay. Still about the same number of incidents. So if you look holistically just at the incidents, about the same, but they're just not death and serious injury. But look at the size of this thing. This is huge, isn't it? I mean, you need to take up so much land, so much area to create one of these. You need to move the power poles. You need to move the underground services, the sewers, or the different lines. The cost of full-size roundabouts is just incredible. Like, I would not be surprised if these sort of things ticked over $10 million in those sorts of environments, that example we were looking at. Okay, so huge costs. Signals don't need to really change the geometry of the road. So we can get a lot more signals in at the same price as one roundabout. Okay, so now you're starting to see, okay, well, how do you make decisions on that? Okay, do I go with a handful of signals at different sites and reduce the risk by 45%? Or do I go one roundabout at this location and reduce the risk by 85%? And you start to and ah about that. Could we go smaller roundabouts? Well, there's merit to that as well. And certainly what we call disruption of priority is a very advantageous thing about this. Obviously, this is a different road environment, but yeah, a vehicle approaching this from any leg doesn't believe they have ultimate priority, as in they can just keep going because everybody else will wait for them. Everybody has to slow down and look around. If this was just a normal T intersection, they would be flying through at speed. Turn subtitles on. They will be running through at speed, and they would be running through at speed. And then when mistakes happen, it's just faster than when they slow down and they look around a bit. So just briefly, like we have conflict point diagrams. That's just, you put a dot every point that a crash could happen. Now, this is around about 4 passenger vehicles. I haven't included pedestrians and cyclists at this stage. I'll talk about them shortly. And this is signals. Now, you might be saying, well, yeah, but that's only signals if somebody breaks the law, runs a red light or the like. Well, yeah, but remember, mistakes, we're trying to design for mistakes because we know people do. They make mistakes. So when I showed you that heat map of Hamilton's death and serious injury, those signals were all operating correctly. It wasn't like the signals malfunction or anything like that. It's just people running red lights and either completely unintentional, just being dazed out, thinking about the fight they've had with their partner or worked a double shift or whatever it is, had a couple of drinks, drive straight through the red light. They don't drive just straight through a roundabout. Very occasionally around the world we see that, but people wake up, they look around, they're all back with it, and we know that then if a crash is to occur, angles are just better. That's a way better crash to happen than that. And they wake you up. Like, roundabouts wake you up. There's physical infrastructure to navigate. It brings a driver back to the driving task. They're alert, they're aware, they slow down. The point I told you, where risk is spiking along the road, we've woken them up. We've activated them in the driving task. But more and more people around the world are starting to say, well, okay, we know signals don't operate super well because of people sort of running through, being sort of dazed out, not having to be alert or everything like that. And sometimes they run through a red light. And we see high speed crashes. Sometimes, you know, they're pushing, they're trying to beat the lights and other things. They're a bit more aware, but they're still going through at speed. So could we look to do some sort of speed calming through vertical deflection is what we call it. So speed humps, platforms, raised areas, maybe not like an urban speed hump, but something just to slow people down a bit. And so this one, and somebody was very eagle-eyed. They looked to know what was going on because of the cost of a roundabout at this location, and a little bit of thinking around, okay, well, we're going to be encouraging cyclists and pedestrians, and this area may start to build up further, and we want to make sure there's more facilities for pedestrians and cyclists and everything like that. And the huge cost a roundabout would endure. They said traffic signals are probably what we want to do here, but are we willing to just say, we'll put signals in and we'll hope for some miracle that this one operates different to the other 5,000 we've got around New Zealand, and that everybody will always comply and we will never see any death and serious injury. No, they were realistic. They said, and people are going to run the red lights. And are we willing to leave that much energy on the table there? And so they said, what about if we do that? We try some raised features on the approach here. So just at those conflict points, the points people are going to crash, we've got them down and we've lowered their speed. And they've thought about, well, what speed do we want to do this? Predominantly looking to try to stop death and serious injury to our passenger vehicles. That's the bulk of road users at this present time. And they said, we'll go with about that 50 kilometers per hour. Sorry, I thought, Loretta, you were talking, but no, Siri just started telling me about kilometers per hour from behind me somewhere. Okay, so they've less Siri.
It wasn't me, but I do have a question if you have time.
Chuck it in now.
So do the raised speed humps effectiveness been reduced with the number of SUVs and utes on the road? We have them in our neighbourhood as we're by a school, but utes just fly over them and keep going.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. And so I suppose there's an immediate sort of terminology thing there. We've got speed humps, and that's what I would call in an urban local residential environment around schools, a bit more speed humps. Then we've got these platforms, and they're a bit gentler. They're just trying to wash off a bit of speed. And then we've got these different raised crossings, and they're sometimes a bit of a combination of both. But yes, okay, their effectiveness is lessened with some of these big vehicles, but you do see other major advantages. Those larger vehicle drivers are pretty aware then of their surroundings as they are going to navigate this. They've come back to reality. They're looking at it. They're realizing, okay, they might go over a bit faster. We have done quite a bit of sort of vertical acceleration testing under different vehicles, and you're spot on. I mean, you've done that, but yeah, we do still see advantages overall. But this, the combination of signals and a raised feature to slow the vehicles right through this high risk point addresses both our likelihood and our severity of crashes. And so there's that one. And if you go back to some of our crash force, that colorful chart that I was showing, you'll see that right angle crashes between passenger vehicles, if you can make sure it's 50 kilometers per hour or below, it is so effective in reducing the chance that it's going to result in death or high level serious injury for the occupants of those vehicles in those incidents. So now, just a little bit of the mechanics of how a raised feature on the road network works. Okay, it is not that it's people hit it and slow down as a result of that. No, they back here where we are in this photo have seen it, and they slow down to ensure that they can navigate over it without that very harsh impact on them and their vehicle. Okay, so people do slow before it, they navigate over it, and then they accelerate back up. So just a lovely little feature. But this has been a big change, and it continues to be a big change in the philosophy of the management of especially the arterial road network or the major local collector roads. Okay, the philosophy in the past has always been you do not disturb a vehicle on these roads. Okay, you don't put vertical deflection, you don't do anything raised, because of all the, they're going to have to slow down. And that's, this is about moving cars and trucks through here as fast as absolutely possible. We don't slow them down. And if we need to do anything, we'll put signals, and then road users' fault if they run the red light. They've got to start complying with these red lights. Well, we're now starting to design and understand that's going to fail. How do we manage that? And just a few more pictures, because we are seeing more and more of these arriving. And thank you, Bianca, for popping that little raised safety platform story in there. And it's the hardest thing is to do the first one. And so, full credit to Hamilton City Council, Waka Kotahi, and all the consultants that were working on that, and all those that sort of did all that comms and engagement and got that through, because it's so hard to do the first one. It's just going to be easier and easier the more of them that come out. And because now you can just be going, if you're doing these, pointing and saying, hey, there's one, the world has not ended, and here's one in Christchurch, which they managed to get in, and they said, well, during that process, it's been done in Hamilton, and it's done in Australia, and the like. Of course, this is going to get pushed back from the community, right? It's different. But once it's been out there for a while, people calm down, they accept it, they just slow down through the intersection, and it's fine. And lots of raised safety platforms just for fun. And there's good technical information available now. Auckland Transport's got stuff out. Austroads has got stuff out, and lots of good information. Okay. So there's some different comments in. I think they're going around to everybody. So I'll have a look at that. I did spend last night reading a draft policy statement on land transport, which I admit I didn't sleep that well last night. But there's some questions around raised features on the different road network in there, and I think there'll be some challenging times around navigating that within government, and I absolutely appreciate the challenges that government face, and certainly political figures are pushing what they believe their constituents want. So there's good evidence around them. It's very well documented. It's a change in practice. It becomes a big change management exercise. But one other thing I would say is that it's not about the raised platform, okay? That just happens to be the way we've achieved our safe system objectives at this location. Roundabouts do the same. They slow vehicles, they lessen severity, right? So there's an example. Okay, so raised works, roundabouts work. Smaller roundabouts can work as well. We've seen that. Different configurations. It may just be that challenge that we put back to the engineers and the designers and the like. As long as they understand safe system principles, there are many ways it can be achieved under the different constraints you have. One thing I have found in my career is that engineers, especially, but most humans, love solving problems. And if you give them the right parameters, and then the challenge, they thrive. They will just absolutely love it and just really try to find that. So if we can ensure safe system principles are understood and then overlay a challenge of okay, well, there are these policy government requirements that are also in place. We have to achieve this under these conditions. Be creative, be innovative, come up with something. They'll thrive, right? But what we sort of do is say government initiative or different, thing has come out. Thus, we will water down our principles and objectives. That's not the way to do it. It just means we'll innovate. We'll do something different. We'll find something else. We'll still achieve those principles under new conditions. Okay. Mid-block. Now, mid-block is a term we use for any part of the road that is between intersections. And mid-block locations and the crashes are less concentrated, but represent a significant proportion of trauma. Remember when I talked about a length of road and it's spiking at intersections, risk. Well, if you take out your intersections and you look at all that addition of risk, all of these areas, they sort of add up to significant risk as well. But they're more distributed over length, which makes it harder to treat to a degree. And we see some horrific energy crashes at different locations. So we have a lot of the New Zealand road network sort of looking like this or lesser standard or the like, and operating at high speed. And I thought just to show you one of the ways I communicate a particular message with people, and I'll just run you through this. There is an international standard for providing safety star ratings for road safety, for the safety of a road from its infrastructure perspective. So the same way we, give a star rating on how much hotel star rating or energy ratings for fridges or anything like that. Star rating is obviously a very commonly understood thing we've seen for cars as well. So this road at 100 kilometers per hour gets a star rating of 1. This is 1 star out of 5. So IRAP is the International Road Assessment Program, which is the international standard for star rating a road. And you can do this fairly quickly, and you can get an indication of where a road sits with a star rating. And for me, it is a communication tool. Some people try to use it for an engineering style tool. I discourage that because it gets a good high level indication, but you need to get into a bit more specifics. But at communicating, it seems to work quite well. So 1 star for that road. So if that road sort of gets some improvements, and we see now we've got some sealed shoulder, and we've got a bit more width, and we've got some audio tactile edge line, audio tactile center line, and we've cleared out some of the power poles and trees and culverts and things like that. So we're up at a nicer standard of road. So that goes up to 3 stars. Okay, so we've got a 3-star road there. Just rub that off. And let's just play around and see what we can do here. Let's get rid of those hundreds. And let's drop the speed limit down to 80 kilometers per hour. Let's just see what that would influence then in terms of the star rating. Okay, we got an extra star just by reducing the speed from 100 to 80. So that's very interesting, isn't it? Now, 80 is good, and we're seeing some significant benefits. And in fact, if you actually look into the details of star rating, every star you can add halves the number of death and serious injury. So that's pretty exciting to get that extra star. But let's just get rid of that and let's whip out those 80s, and we'll chuck in a 70 just to see what happens at a 70 km/h speed limit. And let's star rate this one. Okay, now we're at 5 stars. We've hit a 5-star road, but we need people operating around that 70 km/h mark. Now, I've put them in just as speed limits. You need to do a bit of enforcement to try to ensure that we are getting general compliance. I'm not saying in this you're going to get absolute everybody driving 70 or under, but somewhere generally around that range. But that's now a 5-star road, and it's got high alignment with safe system principles. Let's look at part of the Waikato Expressway, though, at 110. Also 5 stars. That's interesting, isn't it? So the speed and the infrastructure playing hand in hand to work out where we align this star rating. So you can see by that continuous barrier system, that separation and the other features, even at 110 kilometers an hour, we managed to get 5 stars. So we can operate roads at high speeds with very high safety ratings, as long as we have that infrastructure. And that becomes the real core of how we think about strategically managing our infrastructure is, okay, we know the features with the infrastructure we need to make it high level of safety. We can't afford that, or that's not a strategically prioritized route, or for some other reason, we may have to get our high safety level through the management of speed. So Kiwi wrap, yes, and not up to date. But what I want to say on this is you can point star rate any individual road or design very quickly at an immediate point in time. You don't need to rely on those big, cumbersome multi-million-dollar systems trying to map the whole of the network, right? You can just say, what's that road? Go into the system, and within about 5 minutes, star rate that section. Then you can look at a design. You can star rate it. It is quick. It is easy. It's intended to be like that. People have, are trying to do this at macro levels, which I think is good, so everybody could sort of access it quite easily. But just being able to get that indication to talk to people, talk to the public, to ask people, are they willing to have their road still at 1 star? May be helpful in how you think about those messages. Now, I've got a little video in here. I'm not going to actually play it. Actually, I'm just worried about how it streams through on this, but I will play it. And if it doesn't stream, it doesn't matter. And you're going to have a little break anyway. We're going to put it into the learning management system. You can watch it. Little story behind this is just trying to get the message out around safety barrier systems and how they work. A crash occurred after the installation of a central barrier system on a road, and that person called the road authority to say, "Hey, I've driven that road for 40 years. It's never had a barrier system. I just happened to be driving at this time, and somebody came directly at me, and the barrier was there." I said, "I just wanted to say thank you." And they managed to capture that person and get the people and put the camera in front of them. And I think this sort of stuff just communicates why we're doing things. So I'm going to play it. If it doesn't stream for you, just watch it in the learning management system. And we're going to take a short break after this one for a stretch. So let's see if this plays. Now, Loretta, jump in if no volume comes out.
No, I'm not getting any volume.
Okay. All right. Let's just let people watch that in their own time. Okay, apologize for that. I thought that might happen. That's why we've put it into the learning management system. So let's take a 3-minute break, run and grab a coffee, fill up your water. I'm going to come back and we're talking about movement in place, one network framework. Lovely little picture there of, where's that? Prize for that? Yes.
Christchurch.
Oh, yes. Tony's got in there as well. Prize all around. Let's take 3 minutes and we'll come back and we'll talk about movement in place. Safety. If they know it's 1-star safety and they've seen lots of information about the ways that it can be improved through infrastructure improvement or simply speed management perspectives, they'll start to demand that. In the safety of their kids, and if the infrastructure is not up there, they will demand that, and we can start to move that along. Okay, let's get back into it. And thanks, Loretta. Shared the video that wasn't quite streaming through as I feared, but let me talk you through movement in place. Okay, so movement in place / one network framework. Let's just have a quick look at that. So one network framework, movement in place, is essentially a strategic transport planning, road and street planning framework for New Zealand. So movement in place sort of is the bit that sits under that, and movement in place is international. It's used around the world, sometimes called link and place. But let me very sort of hopefully simply here explain to you what this is and how it relates to, safe system decision making and thinking. Essentially, you can look at a road and street network and say, okay, originally maybe all these roads and streets were there to move vehicles or move goods and people. But as we evolved over time in terms of the city evolved, not human evolution, the city evolved, it started to become a place. Some of these became places. And what we mean by places are areas where people socialize, they trade, they congregate, all of these sort of wonderful community aspects of it. We started to identify that, okay, a road or a street could play a movement function. And when I say movement, I mean movement of people and goods, not necessarily movement of cars or trucks, could be movement of bikes, could be walkers through the area, but movement. Or road or street can play a real important place function of an area. Or it could be some combination of both. So what was created were these matrices or these tables, which start to say, okay, let's categorize things. So we've got one for rural areas and we've got one for urban areas. And you can see these high movement roads like an M1 with very low place value. So like a P5, well, that's what we just call a transit corridor. And that's things like your motorways, okay? You do not want people congregating, trading, interacting, having a coffee on or near the motorway, do you? Very obvious. But it can also be cycleways, like dedicated cycleways. They are transit corridors. They're about moving the cyclist through, and you don't want these other place interactions. Down the other end, we've got civic spaces. And civic spaces are really high place value. That's where we want people hanging out. We want coffee, we want bars, we want people having market stalls and trading and all of that sort of exciting stuff. It's not about moving vehicles or people or goods or bikes through the area fast. And so we go there and we categorize. And what happens with this categorization is really useful in us creating and making decisions about what is the appropriate safe system solutions for these locations. Because I can create you a highly aligned safe system environment here or here with different methods. But if this one involves me dropping the speed limit to 50, putting raised safety platforms, slowing vehicles significantly, right? It starts to lose its movement function. Same down here. If I put barriers up along the side of the road right, and start to separate pedestrians out and make these very separated corridors, okay, I'm achieving safe system outcomes, alignment, but I've absolutely degraded the place value of the area. It's not a nice place to hang out, to socialize, to trade. It's very roady. Okay, so what we want to do is understand what is our current movement and place categorization, but what are our objectives? What do we want to achieve with this? And then the safe system solutions almost naturally fall out of that, as long as you understand a little bit about it, the principles. And a lot of the debate we see with community often is around misalignment with the categorization. So one member of the community is thinking about that road and that area up here, while the others are thinking about it down here. And then, of course, they're conflicting. So, civic spaces, but sometimes there is a bit of movement still in these civic space areas up here. And so you're trying to move some people, some goods through these areas, lots of exciting COVID pop-up activations and those sort of things, which were, down in this space where people hadn't appropriately understood the strategic planning and objectives of an area. They had it more up here, but like, COVID and all of that sort of stuff managed to do a quick, okay, pull it back to where it's meant to be, and we can activate some of this. So these sort of streets, if you're going for that high place value area, civic space type area, and those sort of things, you're really starting to acknowledge we don't want, and we're absolutely okay with vehicles going very slow through here, if at all. This is about hanging out, playing, trading, all of those wonderful catch-ups, coffees, and the like. As you build up movement requirements, be that movement of cyclists, pedestrians, public transport, or even cars or trucks, you start to then create a bit more separation of these road users, but still keeping vehicle speeds down. Local streets, they hold low place value and low movement function. Now, obviously, please don't communicate with the residents. We feel they have low place value in their street. They don't like that because that's more the technical definition of place at a whole of city or whole of region sort of level. But when you do sit down in these categories, the safety is easiest to achieve through the slowing of passenger vehicles. If you go the other way with the restriction of vulnerable road user movements significantly, it really impacts on any remaining place value of an area. It's also just astronomically expensive. And so again, cartoony style impressions of this, but in these local street environments, is a very busy local street, obviously, but we start to again see discouragement of any vehicle speed through these areas. It naturally produces a livable, more friendly, more inviting space, and more active transport and all those sorts of wonderful spin-off benefits. Also super aligned with safe system principles. Where we have most of our trouble, well, we have trouble in all categories, but where we have most of our trouble is where there is high movement and high place demand or aspiration. And these are the roads and streets where everybody wants everything. They want it to be the pedestrian-friendly area, the cyclist-friendly area, but they also want it to be the major traffic corridor, and they want it to be the major, it's the truck route through the area. It's so just whatever it is, public transport route, it's got everything. So the first thing I'll always do with strategic planners is say, give me something to work with. Just give me a little nudge down this way or down this way. It's going to help me a lot. But in the end, you've got these big traffic sewers, and you know, they're really pumping cars and trucks, things down them. If you are still sitting in these categories where you have this, we're just not achieving place value in these areas at all. That is not a that holds very little place value. In fact, grade separating pedestrians, and when I say grade separating, I mean overpasses or underpasses, right? Grade separating pedestrians is a major eroder of place. Fencing is another major eroder of place, blocking pedestrians from being able to permeate, move around. It's just low place value. Okay, we can get pretty high safe system alignment by grade separation, fencing off, big walls, yeah, and the like, but it's not place value. So what we more want to do is manage speeds into those closer to tolerable force levels, separate out road user type, so there's not that vehicle to vulnerable road user interaction, and keep speeds calm. So you can see this is higher, this is much higher place value alignment, but still retains movement of people through the area on bikes, walking, public transport, and some passenger vehicle, and is much more place orientated. It does have a little bit of sort of reliance and understanding that everybody traveling in cars everywhere is not, it makes it very hard to achieve both of these. But we do see this play out. Now, artistic impressions is one thing, seeing real world sort of pictures of this sort of stuff and starting for it to filter into our existing road network is good. So separated bike facilities like this and acknowledging vehicles will go through Christchurch here slower, but they will continue to be able to get through these areas. Bike riders can nicely get through there. People can walk through these areas. How are we going on time? 9:20, okay. And some management of infrastructure around some of those conflict points. We're seeing more and more European-inspired, Dutch-inspired facilities because there's been a lot of thinking in how do you manage bikes and manage pedestrians through these areas that have a vehicle demand still, and people are not quite at the stage of willing to eliminate vehicle demand. How do you manage those interacting areas? Protected intersections, I think, is one where we're going to see a fair bit more of this sort of philosophy in place. So, I mean, really, this has got your islands out here. So a vehicle has to make a more of a turn like that to open up how they can see a bike. And bikes spread, change their line a little bit, and they get that open view. So these sort of protected intersections, they're sort of something we'll see a lot more of, and they often sit in these city hub, main street areas where we are trying to manage those conflicting demands. Urban connectors, okay, they're not going to have great place value. They are going to be about moving vehicles through. This will continue to be a requirement of the New Zealand road network for a very long time. You're not going to eliminate people driving cars. But thinking about, okay, well, that's the purpose of that road, then creates an understanding that we will create the environment that is safe, that manages this, but it's going to be at the expense of it being a wonderful place to hang out and to trade and to interact and the like. Even with those, we need to still think about the management of energy and making sure that when mistakes happen, people survive. So continuous barrier systems, even on some of those more urban ones, slowing people through conflict points, intersections with raised platforms or roundabouts or signalized roundabouts or grade separation. And just to put all of this sort of into one quick form, in rural environments, this is the general philosophy, and I've gone general here. This is much more general than New Zealand's One Network Framework movement in place, but I've just tried to make it very, very general. movement, as we get more movement requirement, and in rural areas, it's predominantly around cars and trucks. Predominantly, sometimes we have cyclists, and isolated areas of pedestrian movement, but it's cars and trucks. Where we have the highest movement requirement, we're going to go for those continuous barrier systems. Keep speed up. Make it so people can drive fast and fall asleep and not be killed or seriously injured, or kill and seriously injure others. Okay, we're going to try and stop them falling asleep, or we're going to work on that, but let's manage it. Let's minimize and manage. And we're going to grade separate, and we're going to slow people at conflict points. As we start to come down the movement, we're probably still going to be trying to keep speeds as fairly high as we can, but we're going to separate the big crash risk proportions. We're going to be innovative with the way we manage some intersections, and you'll start to manage with isolated speed zoning, potentially by time, at points of specific risk, like the rural intersection activated warning signs. Then all of the stuff with lower movement requirement starts to get those speed limit reductions in play. So this is going to be a huge challenge in the comms and engagement. People are generally okay with this. Yeah, we got complaints about specifics and specific things to deal with landowners and people having to do that, and some bit of motorcycle grumbling sometimes, and a few other bits and pieces. But overall, we're improving the infrastructure so you can travel fast from A to B. Great, okay. Down here, at a collective level, holistically, this makes so much sense. But for an individual who drives that road, they won't be able to perceive and understand the reasoning behind this, where they've driven that road for a very long time at 100 kilometers an hour. They've never had a major issue, and now, for some reason, it's going down. And that is the difference between collective and individual risk and risk perception. In the urban environment, it gets a little more complicated, but the philosophy still plays out true, and it's all about place as well as now movement. So we will continue to see motorways and those sorts of areas, high movement corridors and cycleways, where we're still retaining a high level of movement, and separating cycle facilities out, so people can move fast on bikes and reasonably fast in vehicles, and continue to do that all at a high, safe environment. Over in the high movement, high place categorization, the cars will be dampened down in speed to ensure that we get the place value requirements we need. And we can see here sort of different environments, but you do see down here 30, where we have low movement requirement, sort of low place, 30s and possibly even below. And certainly as you want more place, you continue to eliminate vehicles essentially, or make it very slow or very challenging for vehicles to get through the area. That's not the priority. Okay, I'll pause there, see if there's any questions or comments I need to deal with. We're ticking along nicely.
No, I think we're all good.
Good.
I've
Thank
got
you for sharing those
just
links as well.
Sorry, I can't find my hand up symbol again. Ken, it's just Tony. I am just thinking about the star rating. I know you talked about IRAP and there were some comments. Thank you, Kathy, sending us links to KiwiRAP. I'm just thinking aloud, but have a question for you.
Yep.
I happen to work in vehicle safety, so star ratings is common in that realm. There's also environmental ratings. Obviously, consumers are used to or getting used to things like the healthy food star ratings you see, or at least you do in New Zealand. Energy efficiency ratings of things like your dryer or your fridge or whatever. And I'm sure there's many other examples. I'm just wondering how much other jurisdictions communications around road safety talk about those IRAP ratings?
Yeah, a wonderful question. And I suppose unpacking that is a consumer choice perspective. So all of the bulk of other star ratings are around informed choice for a consumer. They're making a decision on, the food they're going to buy, or the car they're going to buy, or the hotel they're going to stay at. We've never entered the space of road consumer choice. Now, we can do that in a number of ways. So one would be to very publicly try to influence commuter choice in route selection by safety. You plug into Google, okay, I want to go from this town to this town. It's 100% based on time. They do not care how safe your journey is. Now, we're trying to influence them a bit to say, well, let's not send people down the 1-star roads and the like, even though it can save 1 minute time over an hour journey, because there's a 4-star or 5-star road as an alternative. So we possibly have that as something we could start to influence people's decision making and consumer choice there. The bulk of the star rating publicly has been driven by motor groups, which has been interesting. So your AAA or your AA, the Automobile Association there, demanding, they come from a platform of saying government needs to invest in making roads better. Okay? And it's actually worked out quite well for the safety realm of things, where they're then advocating and putting that information out there. But the challenge we often have from governments within government is that the publication and the widespread publication and alertness to star rating of roads, it's going to show that 60 or 70% of the New Zealand road network is 1 star. That's not what a government wants to be putting out there. So you get that conflict of, we want it out there so that we create demand for improvements, and we can see sort of how that plays out. But there's a lot of people saying, I don't think we can put that out there because we don't have money to fix that. So we're in a bit of a quandary there. As I mentioned, though, the bulk of the time I use this in a communication sense is on an individual project, and I'm sort of struggling with some particular stakeholders, be that residents or another community, and I just simply will put up, your road is currently 1 star under the international standard of safety of road infrastructure. When we finish the job, it goes to 4 stars, right? So your kids will be traveling on a 1-star road currently. It could be a 4-star road if we can move this project through. Just to, I don't know, they start to say, okay, they don't debate the safety. But if you say, well, it will be safer, they go, it won't be safer. It's not that. You're like, it brings it back to a actual international standard, and that's what it is. So it's helpful in that sense, and that's where I've used it for the most of the time, but I'll let you ponder that. Okay, let's talk about cyclists or people that ride bikes, as we talked about, depending on the language you want to use. And I mean, a cyclist is essentially a pedestrian from a vulnerability to force perspective. Helmets help a bit. Helmets help a lot on single vehicle fall style crashes and some of the vehicle ones, but it's not an absolute leap step change that we get some massive change in the amount of force that a cyclist can take wearing a helmet or not wearing a helmet. It's still very vulnerable to physical force. And so what we need to do is just play a very simple equation here. I like to try to keep things simple. At low speed, there is the possibility for vehicles and cyclists to be sharing similar spaces. But as soon as we go above 30 at the sort of maximum, we need to separate. We need to separate physically. And you can use car parking, but you can use curbing to separate. And then when you get up to 70 or above, it's fully separated. Like, I'm talking about a separate cycleway or the like, not using that same roadway. So it's sort of a very simple diagram to try to say that's how to think about treatment philosophy for cyclists in the operation of the network. And we love these sort of Copenhagen style bike lanes in the sense that we're providing that absolute separation from those vehicles, and we can still maintain some vehicle speed and you get that nice separated facility. Briefly on pedestrians or people that walk, scoot, or roll, and that's to try to make sure we don't forget in our pedestrian categorization, when we talk technically, we also think about people in wheelchairs, people on mobility scooters, people who are on skateboards or other types of devices like that. But pedestrians tend to have extremely high vulnerability to physical force, as we do, I said, for cyclists, but more old people, more frail people walking, kids walking, more of that, and the force is quite low. So pedestrian crossings in their native form, which is what I mean by that, is a zebra crossing, we'll call it, that is not raised. The one we've got on screen is raised. A zebra crossing not raised is not a safety feature. In fact, in a lot of circumstances where they're deployed, we see increased pedestrian death and serious injury. The reason for that is that pedestrians have right of way, so they'll walk out there and cross, and that one driver that misses it, they hit them at speed. But raising the crossing turns it from essentially either a negative safety benefit, so it makes things worse, or just nothing, up to about 70% reduction in death and serious injury at crossing points by raising it. That is phenomenal, amazing. And we know then that vehicles slow, they're more alert. Pedestrians actually are slightly elevated, so easier to see. And it's just a really wonderful, wonderfully safe point crossing experience. So I am such a huge advocate of raised safety platforms, raised crossings. They do that amazing job for pedestrians crossing the road. They actually work as what we call a local area traffic management device. So they generally slow traffic around the area as well, because they can't have that long, straight, quick run in a car. And if you strategically place them, you can often reduce crash risk at intersections and other particular points of your network. So they're absolutely wonderful, but the raised nature of them is so critical to achieving that. Now, I know occasionally from a technical perspective, we get in some challenges with raised platforms, buses, sometimes heavy vehicles, and little bits and pieces like that. That's, okay, again, no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Safe system principles don't change just because it becomes a little bit challenging and awkward. All right, there's ways that the engineers can achieve those outcomes under the different parameters that are set. One that I like to use, and we've used a lot, and it's starting to be used a bit more, is, okay, they've said you can't raise this crossing because of like buses or something. That's not, it actually is not the case, but sometimes the bus people won't stand for it. So we can look at using a raised little thing we call a speed cushion here. So the bus's wheels, because they have a larger wheelbase, they straddle over this thing, right? So they're not impacted, but all the vehicles slow down because their wheelbase is a little shorter. Now, yes, again, we have those big four-wheel drives and a few other things but again, a wonderful device that says, okay, I was absolutely stuck under the parameter of not being able to raise the whole thing, but really, why were we raising it? Well, we were trying to get people alert and slowing down at a particular point. There's more than one way to skin the cat. Sometimes we have the same problem with drainage, where we can't, for one reason or another, it's on a flood area or these sorts of things. So different things to think about. Yeah, Loretta, just check if somebody's in the waiting room there, please.
All done, yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question though, just going back to the cycling treatment philosophy.
Yeah.
Does the 30 to 70 km/h separation include just lines and signs?
Great question. No, lines are not infrastructure. Lines are not separation. So painted bike lanes are not separation. They are part of the road network. Sorry, I should have clarified that. Yeah. No, we need to physically separate. Okay, maybe in your sort of 40 environments, we're in just that bit of point in time on bike lane and the like, but certainly in those 50, 60, 70, full curbing, sometimes even barriers to protect is that requirement.
And just one more quick one. Speed cushion, is that a technical term?
It is actually, yeah. Yep, speed cushion, yep. Okay, so if you've connected with me on LinkedIn, you might have seen I put a post out about school crossings and kids and things, which I sort of marvel at the New Zealand approach to this. It's this sort of wonderful sort of culture and communication around safety and understanding and those sort of things and interaction with the police. I think it's marvelous. I've got always slight concerns, but when I look at a crossing like this, I just go, this is the best. I mean, it's raised, it's going to be hugely safe, and you're activating kids, they get responsibility, so that's all just amazing stuff. We've got to love this photo, love it. Now, kids in the communication space and holding that absolute special spot in road safety, in protection and the like, is your absolute friend in communication of anything, and we can certainly use that. So school speed zones, generally amazingly well accepted by the community, and we can leverage off that with school areas, linking it to that very clear, this is why it is protection of children. Children make mistakes, everybody understands that, and protection is paramount. So we can leverage off that as much as we possibly can. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Kids elicit safe system culture and thinking out of the community. I'd love to see it spread to protection of everyone, but it is immediate with kids. Okay, a couple more little things, and then I'm going to run through some stuff. So roundabouts in urban areas, challenging for cyclists and pedestrians just crossing, and we don't see as great safety benefits. Providing those dedicated raised areas around it, hugely influential in improving safe system alignment. There's a couple of examples of what we call protected roundabouts for pedestrians and cyclists. And I'll just very briefly say, we know what safe system environments are in the road environment. And this is an example where it was a work site for about a week and a bit. And for the workers' protection, they slowed the speed down to roadwork speed limits from 60 down. And then they put some barriers up because the road workers were in here doing electrical works on the signals and everything like that. Then as soon as they were finished, they ripped it all out. And then about 2,000 pedestrians a day cross at this location, wait here, crossing, but they're not afforded the protection that the workers are. Same physical stature. Okay, people sometimes say, oh, but the workers are looking at their work. They're not concentrating to check on traffic. The pedestrians are looking at their phone, or they're listening to, or they're intoxicated. There's so many risk factors for the pedestrian traveling public. So the mind shift we need to go and get people on is that, protection of humans is protection of humans, be that a worker or the traveling public as well. And we should acknowledge and take those principles into account. It is unacceptable here for somebody to be killed or seriously injured if they're a worker. but apparently it's acceptable if they're just a member of the traveling public. So if I ever have to do sort of that elevator pitch on safe system, I say, well, do you know workplace health and safety and how we think about workplace health and safety? And I say, yeah. I say, I want you to think about everybody using the road network like they are a worker, and how would we create a safe work environment for them on the public road network? Be that a walker, a cyclist, a pedestrian, a driver. Motorcyclists, extremely challenging under the safe system in terms of, okay, you put into the mix mistake making, human tolerance to physical force, and speed. And it's so problematic. We have, from an infrastructure perspective, come up with some guides. Here's the New Zealand one, which is how to design infrastructure roads to get the best we possibly can for motorcycle safety. Even if we did everything in these, we'd still see motorcycle trauma pretty high. Motorcycle, just the physics of it. So here's motorcycle crash test dummy striking a barrier post, and the forces at 60 km/h are unsurvivable. Okay, we can get more survivability with things like underrun protection under the barrier, so you're not hitting a point, you run along it. But there are just limitations with what we can handle from that perspective, as well as motorcyclists. So a huge challenge. There's keeping motorcyclists within some boundaries is good. We see extreme motorcycle behaviour. We see extreme car driver behaviours. We see extreme bike behaviour. See extreme walking behaviour or pedestrian behaviour. So it's not like that's an isolated group that does things. But when you sit it at such a high risk perspective at its base, then anything above that is just absolutely catastrophic. So motorcyclists are about 20 to 30 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured per kilometre travelled than somebody in a passenger vehicle. That just shows you how dangerous it actually is. And so mistakes are just hugely challenging. I don't have all of the answers. I mean, I go around the world doing motorcycle infrastructure presentations, and I still really struggle with understanding how this road user group fits into our long-term objectives. However, I know that there's stuff we can continue to do that's going to improve things. One thing from a comms engagement perspective that I just want to flag is we've been doing this for a long time in a lot of jurisdictions, is what we call a motorcycle safety audit. So we get motorcycle representatives and sometimes groups of motorcyclists, and we will go through a route with them, a popular motorcycle route, and we will talk to them about what they've felt, what they're concerned with. Then we'll talk to them about some of the engineering aspects of it. And we collaboratively work together to ensure that the proposed infrastructure upgrades are going to be beneficial from an evidence perspective, but also, taking into account the motorcycle community's thoughts on these sorts of things. They absolutely love it, and they tell all of their people their involvement in this project. They take ownership of the works and the upgrade, and they advocate for it and they support it, and so you really do see some wonderful collaborative engagement and support from the community. So nice little one to do. In my last sort of 5 minutes, I just want to touch on a couple of safer people, and I say safer people stuff here. Getting safe people will never happen, like absolute safe, just because of, humans, mistakes, challenges, those sort of things. We can get safer, and we will continue to work to get safer people. Understanding the limitations is key. Education continues to be effective, and of course it's most effective at our younger cohorts, ensuring people get good messages at school around road safety. They can be little Trojan horses, take those messages back to their parents in the car, talking about specific things. And certainly when we have young road users, we need to understand it's a pretty exciting time in life, isn't it? There's all sorts of exciting parties and access to alcohol and drugs and all sorts of late night activities and then we've thrown in the mix a very powerful, dangerous, high-speed vehicle for them to possibly be involved in. So it's a pretty ugly mix, as everybody knows. So what we know sort of works is with young drivers and the like, assisting them with strategizing in scenario-based strategies for not getting in situations of risk. So that works. Telling them not to take risks doesn't tend to work. I think the DNA and who they are dominates over us wagging our finger and saying, do not take risks. And in fact, good evidence, good research showing, you drag the kids to the morgue or the emergency ward and you say, if you don't drive safely, this is what will happen to you. Doesn't work, doesn't reduce trauma, disturbs kids a lot psychologically, and we don't see any road safety benefit out of it. Also, like advanced driver training, anything high speed where they're learning high speed skids or learning to get out of skids or high speed braking, just increases their risk-taking activity. They're more likely to be killed or seriously injured after they've done it. They take more risks, they're more confident. So we just need to be evidence-based, targeted with this cohort. There are good existing programs. They need to continue to be rolled out, and they can be mostly all done in classrooms and very basic vehicle control in the public road environment. Just a couple more things here. So I love this campaign from the TAC, and maybe we'll ask Paul his involvement in this one, which is tackling mobile phone use and saying, instead of saying, if you use your mobile phone, you'll be killed, or going with shock and awe campaigns around that, it's simply to say, if you use your mobile phone while you're driving, your kids are going to do the same. Now, immediately we've taken out that individual risk versus collective risk argument, where the driver will naturally say, when you say, don't text and drive, you'll be killed, it doesn't resonate because they've been texting and driving and they've not been killed. And every time they do it, and they don't get killed, it reinforces that government's talking crap again, right? We need to target other mechanisms on them, and something like this is creative, is good. And I think there's lots more ability for us to lever off that philosophy. Whole school approach to road safety, education combined with police activities and enforcement activities around these areas can work well. Supporting community education, so those really passionate community groups that want to be doing good stuff, our job is to ensure that they have evidence-based initiatives that they're doing. Graduated licensing, so having lots of restrictions on licensing as people enter into the system is important. Targeting especially motivated groups, so that's parents essentially. I mean, there's some others, but parents and proper targeting of parents to ensure that their kids act safely, and programs that change the way road users use the network. I can talk about a little bit more shortly. So fear tactics don't generally work in terms of changing individual driver behavior. Scaring the public on a particular issue serves a purpose, though, but it's more platform for legislative change rather than expecting to get individual driver behavior. Most of the research shows that fear tactics elicit behavior change on the safest people. Skill-based driver training I talked about. One-off events, so you need to have this as a coordinated campaign and thought rather than that one-off event. Yeah, we don't see much benefit of driver simulators at this stage. Racing clubs, go-karting clubs and things like that are the same essentially as skill-based driver training. And general just information only. So just putting out the number of people killed on a road or the like, it can help set your platform for legislative change or infrastructure changes or speed changes or the like. But at an individual driver behavior perspective, telling them you're entering a road where X number of people are being killed doesn't tend to change the driving behavior. Again, a very small portion of very, very safe people may change their driving behavior. And I just wanted to show this. This is learner drivers. This is from New South Wales, I think. Victoria's got one as well. But essentially, learner drivers have a supervising driver next to them. And they have very, very low crash rates. This is where they go out by themselves. And it comes down with experience, and then it plateaus out. Now, some people use this. This is originated because people wanted to talk about why we're putting in more restrictions on these drivers. I often use this to simply say, anybody who comes to me and says, well, it's all about driver skills. If everybody was like a Michael Schumacher skill level of driving, we wouldn't see any road trauma. I'm like, no. Pretty much the safest driver we've got is somebody for their first or so day out there on the public road network with a supervising driver next to them. That's the safest driver we've got. It's not about skills. All right. We do need some basic level of skills. But apart from that, it's the system around it. And I think encouragement is really exciting. So incentivizing campaigns, let's pay people to drive safely or give them incentives to do so. Cheaper licenses for low demerit points, these sort of things. There is some evidence around that being beneficial. Advertising specific behaviors as part of coordinated effort. So instead of just drive safely, well, take a break every 2 hours or the like. Now, I don't need to talk to this group about some of these basics around recall, as in, I remember a message, but does that actually change action? We've got to think about that. And the use of comedy, because New Zealand's the best in the world at appropriate use of comedy in road safety advertising, and it's just amazing. You're winning in that sense. But really, I pop this up because we're trying to change people's perception of the system. And we really need people to start questioning the inherent unsafe parts of our system. Here you go. The South Australian government stole one of your ads. Again, okay, this is a bit shock and awe if you remember this one. However, what is beautiful about it is other people make mistakes. Not you make mistakes, so slow down. That's not going to resonate. But other people, okay. And human tolerance to physical force. You remember I used the Graham analogy? I used the Usain Bolt analogy. This is Graham. Google Graham road safety. And if you don't know who Graham is, Google Graham road safety. You'll enjoy it. And of course, enforcement. Well, police are often seen as the face of road safety. We understand enforcement in playing that regulating role. The whole system around it is hugely important. We need to be strategic with our enforcement effort because of the cost and all of that. We know there's specific deterrence and general deterrence. So specific deterrence is, I've been fined for that, I won't do it again. General deterrence is, I could be fined, and so I won't do that activity. And visual presence is hugely effective in general deterrence. I'm going to jump through this because I think I'm out of time. I was going to talk to some of these, but I got excited down one of these areas early on, so we kind of covered that. And I'm going to hand over to Loretta to show you your little assignment. Apologise, we're speeding up here. Over to you, Loretta. Show them what to do, and I'm going to look at the chat.
Thank you. All right, I'll just bring up my learning management system. I hope you can all see that.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so for module 2, couple of things. So I did pop in that video there for you if you wanted to watch that again, that Ken referenced earlier. There is another quiz, so please ensure you click on that and complete that. But there is, I guess, a little bit of preparation for Friday's module 3 session. So just under the tasks here, projects for discussion. What we would like you to do, there is a PDF there, so you do need to download that PDF, and I'll just open that up. So there's 3 projects on this file. So with these 3 projects, what we would like you to do is to watch all 3 videos. So there is a link in the PDF to watch all 3 videos, and have a think about, you know, we will allocate you one of the projects, but we still prefer you to watch all 3 so that when there is discussion going on Friday, you know, you sort of are familiar with what the video is. But have a think about, you know, what you like about the interviews, what you didn't like, you know, your different audiences, are there key messages, and of course, what could be improved. So yeah, 3 different projects there. Ken, did you want to run through anything there?
Yeah.
Oh, just before you go, there is also a group list here as well. So if you click on this list, you'll see your name and you've been allocated one of the projects, which you'll then be put into a breakout room on Friday with that particular group as well.
So just watch all the videos. They're only 2-minute videos. It's me interviewing a project engineer on their project. Okay, watch the video, or watch all 3. But click on that group list and see which one you're going to be given, and then answer those questions associated with that video. So hone in on the video that you've been allocated and answer those questions like, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? You know, where do you think, what's the audience? And are the messages appropriate for that audience? And what could be improved? Now, really, I want you to think about messaging here. They are not media trained project managers, engineers. So you're going to cringe at some of their, you know, particular things. Just think messages. Is this message appropriate? What is the, you know, what would the target audience for something like this be? And are those messages going to resonate? And what are some thoughts around that? Okay, so it's all going to be around messaging. Now, are those groups that's not working, that link? Or?
Yeah, I'll just fix it up. Yeah.
Okay, so
won't take me long.
watch each of the videos. They're only about 2 minutes. Then find out which one's yours and put some dot points around those questions, and you will talk about that with a small group at the start of next session. Make sense?
Right on time.
You don't need to submit anything here. You do have a quiz though. You've got just a normal quiz, which won't take you long, and this little activity to prepare, and then you'll have a chat with the group about it next session. Sorry, we've just gone 5 seconds over time. Shoot us through any email questions you've got. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you, and we'll be here with Paul next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you
Thanks,
soon.
Ken. Thanks, Loretta.
Bye.
Bye.